You know Gray Bar for electrical parts, but there's one more thing you may not be thinking of us for that can help maximize your next project's total value. Our pre-project planning services are designed to help you win the bid, save on labor costs, and keep your installers productive across your entire build. The sooner you call us, the better. Because when we're there from the beginning, we can anticipate your needs and help you solve problems before they become problems. Yep, Gray Bar does that.
You know, if we had the ability to roll out a Patreon of the unrecorded, the cutting room floor conversations of the Show Before the Show podcast, we'd have some pretty entertaining stuff. And that's how we welcome you into this week's episode of the Show Before the Show, by telling you all the fun stuff that you missed before we started recording. Hi, everybody. Welcome into the latest edition of the official podcast of Minor League Baseball. My name is Tyler Mon. Sam Dykstra and Benjamin Hill are in New York City. Hello, fellas.
Hello, Tyler.
Already had some fun.
Yeah, if you're going to tease what we were talking about off mic, I guess I'll tease it a little bit on mic. Like, we were just looking at the Marvel logos and having a chat.
Professional. Yeah.
What? Yeah.
I said that's because you're the professional.
Right.
So that's good.
Well, it's something people will get to listen to in some form.
Right.
We're going to be doing
today.
Yeah. Longtime listeners might remember we did a hat draft in the past. That was a lot of fun. Got a lot of engagement from that. So we're bringing back a draft of the Marvel logos next week for your holiday listen. We'll come out with that right before Thanksgiving. You can take it with you on your travels. We were bantering a little bit about some of the logos. Not all of them are up right now, but they will be tomorrow, November 18th. You'll be able to purchase stuff on that date. But yeah, we are probably going to reveal a little bit about our own personalities and preferences and who we take next week. So I'm really looking forward to that. But yeah, Ben, what do you... I feel like I already know your first pick. We haven't established a draft order yet, and no. Tyler, I don't know if we want to spoil Ben's pick, but
yeah, I think we gotta leave it as
we got it. This is just another tease for another tease.
Exactly. Yeah, we can't cut into next week's the anticipation of next week's draft.
Yeah, just build it up. But plus, we are never anything less than our true selves here on this podcast, but yet we all contain multitudes. So there are some aspects of ourselves that don't really make it to air.
Yeah.
And I do wish I could show the fullest version of myself on this podcast sometimes, just in the deep range of opinions and the complexity of just being alive. But, we're talking about minor league baseball. We got to keep it tight. And that's okay.
He's not wrong.
There's still a long off season ahead. So who knows what deep recesses of our brains we'll get into come January.
We get so much more existential over the off season. Well, we don't have anything to distract us from, the cold onset of winter and time. Am I right? So with that dark intro into the Show Before the Show, big welcome into this week's episode. You can get in touch with us, podcast at MILB.com. You can find Ben on Twitter at Ben's Biz. Sam is at Sam Dykstra, MILB. I am at Tyler Mon. Let us know your questions, your thoughts, your comments, your concerns. And let's kick things off with a news item of note from minor league baseball, which is a very cool news item. A local ownership group has emerged to purchase the San Antonio Missions, who will, for the first time since the 1980s, be headed by local ownership, which is very cool. Longtime franchise owner Dave Elmore and the Elmore Group selling the San Antonio Missions to a group of buyers called Designated Bidders LLC, BIDDERS, which I very much enjoy. A bunch of local San Antonio business executives. They will also partner on this purchase with Ryan Sanders Baseball, which is owned by the families of Nolan Ryan, Reed Ryan, and Don Sanders. They will join the Designated Bidders as owners and operators of the San Antonio Missions going forward. This is cool. There has been so much kind of consternation about the future of ownership for a lot of teams in minor league baseball, and whether that's going to become super centralized in the hands of just a few owners, or how it's going to look going forward. But Ben, this is a really cool step to not only have this team be purchased by a local group, but be purchased by a local group for the first time since the 80s.
Yeah, and this is a franchise that's obviously been around for a very long time, and teams named the Missions playing in San Antonio going back to the 19th century. So a lot of history in that city, and obviously an increasingly large market in minor league baseball, but just in the sports world at large. I mean, obviously they have an NBA team, and part of the ownership group are Spurs legends David Robinson and Manu Ginobili. I've never said his name out loud before.
You got it.
I got it. Yeah.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Manu Ginobili. So that's a cool aspect as well. But certainly, I think the biggest part of this purchase is the ballpark. And, the press release makes note of the quote ballpark issue. But I think this ownership group coming in with all these people behind it is a pretty strong signifier that the push for a new ballpark for the Missions is going to go into overdrive right now. They play at Nelson Wolff Stadium, the Wolf. It's in a comparatively isolated area. There's not really anything around it in terms of other businesses, other things to do. It's over 30 years old, and it's definitely showing its age. I was there this summer, and it's been no secret for years that San Antonio, the team, the affiliates, ownership group, wanted a new ballpark and trying to make that happen. And now, with Major League Baseball and more direct control of the minor leagues, there's facility requirements that every team is trying to meet right now, and it's tough to look at the Wolf and see that the amount of money that would have to be put into the stadium to bring it up to standards is probably not an investment you want to make, given its age otherwise. And I think the path forward, especially in a huge market like San Antonio, is a new ballpark. So I would expect to see more and more news about the path towards a new ballpark for the Missions. That's obviously a market that is a good one to operate in, especially if you had a new ballpark and not one that's old and a little bit out of the way. I think you could really, potentially bring San Antonio, the Missions baseball experience to a much broader audience with a newer ballpark in a more centralized location. So I think that's a big part of it. The Elmore Group has owned the team for years. If you remember, the Missions were part of that very complicated series of maneuvers a few years back, where if I can remember it right, all these teams in the Elmore Group ownership, the Helena Brewers moved to Colorado Springs, became the Vibes. The Colorado Springs Sky Sox, who had been there, moved to San Antonio, became a AAA team for a number of seasons. And then the AA San Antonio Missions moved to Amarillo. Then the Mission spent a couple years in AAA, and then with the reorganization of minor league baseball prior to 2021, went back to AA. So there's been an aspect of the more things change, the more things stay the same in San Antonio, with all that maneuvering around, changing affiliates. But now they're the AA affiliate of the Padres in the Texas League. So that seems kind of normal after all these different maneuverings. But yeah, I think that a new ballpark is I don't want to say on the way, because we've covered this through the years, and a lot of the times, the path to a new ballpark is more complicated than it seems. I mean, just ask, the Richmond Flying Squirrels, who moved from Norwich, Connecticut, way back in, what was that, 2009, under the premise that we're getting a new ballpark. They still don't have one, and they kind of shoot themselves in the foot by being the top draw in the Eastern League. But that is still an ongoing process. So just seeing a new ownership group come in, have designs on a new ballpark, sometimes it's easy to get a little ahead of yourself and be like, oh, awesome, I can't wait for that in a couple of years. Maybe in a couple of years, maybe in more than a couple of years. But obviously the amount of people involved with this ownership group, the local connections, Ryan Sanders coming in, they operate Corpus Christi, Round Rock Express, other teams in Texas, they are really adept at, the business of minor league baseball and knowing, how to proceed in these situations. They got Round Rock Express completely off the ground, and Corpus Christi, from places that didn't have baseball at all at the time, and new ballparks and really successful franchises. So, and Manu Ginobili and David Robinson, you've got some star power in there as well. So I think that goes a long way, at least, because if you Google it right now, you'll see news headlines that say like David Robinson, part of new ownership group. It's good to have those names in there because it just keeps it in the public eye even more.
Yeah. And what can you tell us just generally? You're talking about, specifics with Wolf Stadium and the recent history of the San Antonio Missions. But what is the San Antonio market like for baseball?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now they're not drawing, commensurate with the size of the market and the amount of people who, theoretically could get out to games. And a lot of that is the stadium. I forget the geography of the city exactly, but it is not, anywhere near downtown. If you're going to a game, you're only going to the game. It's not part of a larger San Antonio experience. And I think, there's, as happens with older ballparks, then of course they have a large dedicated fan base, a lot of military. There's several military bases in the area. So you almost always see a strong military presence at the game. And just having baseball in that city for so long, they have a dedicated group of fans who are generational and, who are now taking their families to game, having grown up going to games themselves. So they've got a solid base, but given the growth of that market and even like a quasi major league market, when you look at the demographics, I think it is apparent they need to be somewhere else. And just from a player development level as well, I'm sure there's a lot of, improvements that need to be made, internally in the guts and the locker rooms, all that kind of stuff that goes into it as well. And when you go to the ballpark, I like it. It's kind of quirky. It's laid out, uniquely. It's on I don't know the acreage or the square footage, but there's a lot of land. There's a lot of room to move, multi-levels, kind of things jutting out at weird angles. I like it there. But it definitely does not scream, modern day minor league baseball experience or in one of the largest markets that has minor league baseball.
So you can read up on the San Antonio Missions new ownership story at MILB.com. And Ben, other than that, right now it's kind of newsletter and ballpark guides time. What's the update on? I know you're continuing to go through the ballparks that you've been to, especially this year. What's the update on that in the newsletter?
Yeah. It's not the most exciting thing in the world, but it's nice to make progress on the ballpark guide project. Had St. Paul CHS Field last week. Tulsa's One Oak Field ran last week, and Wichita is done right now. It'll be up by the time this podcast is up, and then working as well on Salem Field, home of the Buffalo Bisons. So that proceeds apace, and the newsletter, really, really enjoy it. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe to it. Go to MILB.com, and then you'll see, a menu. What do you call it? The top nav.
Yeah.
The
top navigation bar.
The top navigation bar. It says scores and schedules, stats, standings, news, video, teams, and then there's 3 dots. Hover above those 3 dots and you'll see newsletter registration. Click on newsletter registration and make sure to register for, at the very least, my newsletter, the Ben's Biz Beat. Over the last couple of weeks, I've asked people about to share their favorite minor league books, and I got a great response on that. Have broken up the responses into a series of newsletter editions, 3 in a row, really. So it's been great to get those recommendations. Do you guys? Yeah, unfortunately, I did not receive your responses for inclusion in the newsletter. But do you guys, when you think about minor league baseball books, do you have any that stand out to you that you've read through the years that really jump out, or do you say, nah, we work in minor league baseball, my spare time is precious and I cannot read more about it?
Tyler,
you know what? First. You know what's strange is I feel like I read a lot of baseball books, but I don't read a lot of minor league baseball books, which seems probably odd given my my chosen career field. I did like, whenever there's a story that's written by like a big leaguer, but they talk about their minor league time. Like I think in Ball 4, I think Jim Bouton spends
I was going to say Ball 4.
Decent amount of time talking about his minor league days, which is cool. Yeah. I remember Barry Zito's book. I interviewed him for a story on MILB.com a few years ago about his time in the minor leagues, which was very short, but then his time returning to the minor leagues and kind of playing that season in Nashville as part of his comeback when he was making it back to the A's. And so I kind of like those stories where it's like the people who have graduated, but give you the feeling of what it was like, before they were who you know them as. I kind of like those things, but now I feel like I am neglecting my duty by not reading more minor league baseball specific kinds of books. I do have that book, Bottom of the 33rd, about the longest game in professional baseball history, which of course was an International League game between Pawtucket and Rochester.
I was going to let him get it on his own.
1982 or whenever it was, but I haven't read it.
That's a great book. That's by Dan Barry, who works in the New York Times, Rhode Island guy. And that's a really well done book because it tells the story of the game chronologically, but then, say a certain player comes to bat in the game and then it, zooms out and tells his story. And so it tells a story of all these different participants in the game, not just on the field, but, in the broadcast booth, in the front office, the very few diehards in the stands. That game is amazing. That it went to something like 4 a.m. before finally, like the league president, who they couldn't get in touch with, finally got it. He was like, "No, stop!"
Yeah, he finally answered the phone. It was just like, "You idiots!
Wait a minute, what are you doing?"
This right now.
Yeah, and crazy. So they postponed it at like 4 something in the morning on what was then Easter Sunday morning after 32 innings, and I know a lot of people know this history, but then they didn't. That was in April at some point, and they didn't resume the game until later in the summer, several months later. And at that point, Major League Baseball, this is 1981, was on strike. So the 33rd inning was like the biggest sports story, like in the country, because it's summer. The other sports really aren't going on, the major American sports, and there's no baseball because baseball's on strike. So like the national media descended upon Pawtucket's McCoy Stadium for that exciting conclusion, which ended and they only played.
I was going to say, yeah, and they played like 15 minutes after playing 32 innings earlier in the year.
I had 2 favorite stories of that. One is the guy who walked off, and unfortunately, I can't remember his name now.
I know Marty Barrett played a role in the walk off. He might not have scored the run. Was it Dave Koza, I believe?
Something like that. Yeah. But he was like on Good Morning America the next day. Like, because again,
that's amazing.
Became the star of athletics in the United States for one day
in a very different time than when you could just like, I'll hop on Good Morning America tomorrow because, it's easy to get in touch with anybody and do a video interview over Zoom or over Skype or over whatever. Like that's a very different time to just like hop on Good Morning America the next day.
Yeah, they had to send camera crews and do all this crazy stuff. My other favorite part of that story is the Rochester broadcaster said, like, we're going to be doing tape of this whole game. And I think his wife was like back in the studio, and all they had left was, I want to say, either Frank Sinatra or Elvis tapes. So when you listen back to the audio, you can hear occasionally like some crooning just going on in the background because they just recorded over it. They didn't have fresh tape left in the studio because they weren't expecting to go to 4 a.m. in the morning.
Again, a very, very different time.
Yeah, so it's very much a ghost in the tape of this historic broadcast.
Having physical tape was like a finite resource. It wasn't just like, wow, also we got the cloud and such. Well, now I got to read that book.
Yeah, pull it out. That's a good one for sure.
I'm heading on a trip today, so I may need some new reading material. But okay, those are some good ones. Ben, what else have people replied and sent in and suggested then?
All over the place. And there's been some that I wasn't too familiar with. Like here, I'm looking at last week's edition of the newsletter. And here's a recommendation by a man named, who recommended this? I want to make sure I get his name right. Don Wiederecht. I hope I'm getting your name right, Don. But he says, Owning a Piece of the Minors by Jerry Klinkowitz. It talks about his love of baseball and then his financial investment in the game with the Waterloo Diamonds. He did everything he could to promote the team and deal with the changing world of minor league baseball. Those are the kind of recommendations I like, this sort of, on the ground account of, owning the Waterloo Diamonds. That's a good one. Another one that same individual, Don, recommended, and this is one that I weirdly have not read because I've read a lot of minor league books through the years, often writing about them, and this one comes up a lot, but I never read it, A False Spring by Pat Jordan. And that, Pat Jordan was in the minor leagues, and it's kind of a more ball force style, warts and all account of scraping by in the minor leagues, decades ago. I believe that was in the 70s. So that was a good one. I've mentioned this book before, one that no one suggested, and I can't remember how exactly I first came about it, but I read about it, and I read it years ago and wrote about it a little for MILB.com. But there's a pitcher named, I've still talk about me and not being able to pronounce last names. A pitcher named Steve Fireovid, Fireovid. I've never heard his name say out loud.
Huh.
I remember he's in the 87 top set. So I remember him having a baseball career. He's a journeyman reliever, spent more time in the minors than the majors. And the title of his book reflects that, The 26th Man. And I always have liked this book. He wrote it in 1996. It covers his career, but The 26th Man speaks to, a career where you're just constantly going up and down, spending a lot of time in AAA, getting the majors, getting released, signing on with a new team, getting an unexpected call to the majors, and back, and just chronicling that in a really, I thought, perceptive, empathetic, intelligent way. I remember there's one anecdote in that book where he's pitching in Mexico, and he had one of the best starts of his life. And he talks about how, despite how he's not a household name, despite how he's the 26th man, after that one night in Mexico, he's like, you know what? Today, all over the world, I was the best pitcher in the world. Like, I had the best performance of anyone who got on a mound today. And I just really liked that.
That is really cool
way to think about it. It was like winter league. It's not during the major league season. And just being like, no one was better than me tonight. And that's just like a cool thing. And I think a cool way to think, not to be arrogant, but to think about, what we all do. And it's easy to be like, what am I doing? Or, I'm not good at it, but just think about the specifics of what you do, how you do it. And then every once in a while, be like, you know what? No one did this as well as me, this specific thing. And, none of us can say at any given moment we were the best player in baseball on a given day, even if it was in the Mexican Winter League. But I think that it's always, his way of thinking about that always stuck with me, and to the point I'm even talking about it now. Steve, I should pronounce your last name correctly, but I really don't know. Fireovid.
I kind of want to make the Fireovid prize a thing now in the minor leagues every night, and just look at, like, I guess you could determine it by game score or something, but like every night there is some pitcher in the minor leagues who is
somebody who just like
shoving.
Yeah.
And did it at a level, at least statistically, better than anybody in the majors too. I mean, we could come up with that in some way. That would be a fun stat. It could be Justin Verlander going 8 shutout innings, something like that. It could be a major league guy, but every once in a while, it's going to be somebody in the South Atlantic League or the Carolina League or the California League, some 18-year-old kid who struck out 11 over 6 no-hit innings. And he was the best statistical pitcher of that day. I really like that thought.
I like that idea. That is pretty cool. Well, I'm going to go dig for my copy of Bottom of the 33rd. And Benjamin Hill, you can find on the internet many places at Ben's Biz. On Twitter, he's at the Ben's Biz. On Instagram, and of course, MILB.com/fan/Ben's Biz as well. And thanks, man. Looking forward to your draft selections next week.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. I got to, hey,
gotta be ready
until they're all released and do some analysis, but I'm looking forward to that as well.
Analysis. You already have your first 4 picks lined up.
Maybe
it's just going to come down to are Tyler and I going to steal them?
Yeah, which is always my biggest point of pride, is when Sam and I do a draft together and I steal something that Sam was going to pick the pick before. I grab,
and then you have to edit out all of my curses. Yeah.
The strings of expletives. He just lets them fly in his fit of rage. So be on the lookout for that, Ben.
I will. And I like when Sam curses because it's like really anachronistic. I think a lot of it is not actually curses anymore. It's kind of like 18th century curses.
Old fuddle duddy.
Yeah.
Like, whoa.
Somebody in 1876 is very offended. I just said this.
Easy, Sam. Jeez Louise. This guy's going nuts over here.
See, Jeez Louise is one of them.
Yeah, that's true. That's a fair point. That's a fair point. That would have turned somebody off from this podcast. Well, I never. Gonna write to my representative in Congress, whose name will start with an initial, and then H. Fishman Cotitude. Sending my letter now. All right, obviously we've had enough. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, guys.
Sam, our interview subject this week. Give us the lowdown. I was supposed to join you yesterday, and I got confused on time zones because we've been doing this for 7 years, and I am still a complete idiot. But please, we're headed to the Texas Ranger system.
We are headed to the Texas Ranger system. Grant Wolfram, a left-handed pitching prospect from the Texas Rangers system, just came off 6 weeks in the Arizona Fall League, was good enough to pitch in the Fall Stars game. So it was a very solid 6 weeks for Grant in the Arizona Fall League. He was also in the news this week because he is Rule 5 eligible. The Rangers did not add him, but he is a potential dark horse Rule 5 candidate. So we get into that a little bit. This is my discussion here with Grant Wolfram.
Wherever Bud goes, his harmonica goes with him. It's a pocket full of soul. Now he's living with prostate cancer. He asked his doctor about Xtandi enzalutamide. Xtandi 40 milligram tablets treats men with prostate cancer that has spread to other parts of the body and responds to a medical or surgical treatment to lower testosterone. Xtandi may cause serious side effects: seizure, a brain condition called PRESS, allergic reactions, heart disease that can lead to death, falls and bone fractures, swallowing problems, or choking that can lead to death. Stop Xtandi and get medical help at once if your face, tongue, lip, or throat start swelling. Tell your doctor at once if you faint, have a seizure, quickly worsening headache, decreased alertness, confusion, vision problems, chest pain or discomfort, or shortness of breath. Xtandi can cause harm to an unborn baby or miscarriage. Use birth control during and 3 months after Xtandi. Common side effects include muscle and joint pain, feeling unusually tired, hot flashes, constipation, less appetite, diarrhea, high blood pressure, bleeding, falls, fractures, and headache. Talk to your doctor and visit Xtandi.com.
Well, we're very excited this week on the show before the show to be joined by Rangers pitching prospect Grant Wolfram, who's just coming off a trip to the Arizona Fall League. Grant, first off, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And let's talk a little bit about the Fall League. You just got back. You're in Michigan now, your home state. You just got back from the AFL. Take us through that experience. What were these last 6 weeks like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely was an awesome experience. You know, the first thing when you get there, you unpack and you're in the major league locker room. I don't know if all teams do that. I was hearing rumors that not every single team gets to be in the major league locker room. So we were one of the fortunate teams to be in the Royals camp there. And that's just a pretty cool feeling. You know, it feels like you're a lot closer to the big leagues when you walk into a locker room. That's just beautiful on the inside, you know, and everyone treats you like a big leaguer. So I would say just from day one, you know, I think it just helps your confidence walking into that locker room and being around the guys that you see that you're always playing against in every league. Like I played a ton of those guys in low A and high A, and then a few guys this year in double A. And it's pretty cool because you notice those guys specifically because they're typically the best players on the other team. And then you all come together on one team. I'm like, all right, we're going to be pretty good in this fall league. So I like our chances. You know, just being able to be around those guys, learn from all those guys will take your game to the next level. So it was a lot of fun for me. It was a great experience.
Yeah, I mean, the Fall League, there's many ways to approach it, right? It can be a way to show off your stuff. It can be a way to fine tune at the end of the season. How do you feel like you grew as a pitcher? Like what was something you were doing there at the end that you weren't doing, 6 weeks ago back in October?
Yeah, I think, you know, just the overall level of the lineups and the hitters, I think it just gave me a lot of confidence because, you know, I played a few of those guys from the Twins and stuff in the Texas League and the Diamondbacks. And, you know, a lot of those guys were hitting 3-4 in those lineups. And then all of a sudden they're hitting, 7, 8, 9. It's like, okay, there's really no break in the lineup. So I think it just gave me a lot of confidence that, the whole lineup was stacked, and to go out there and, get outs every outing was just a huge confidence boost. And just wanted to keep going where I ended the season in Double-A. So it felt really good to do that.
Yeah, let's just go over your numbers real quick for people at home listening who don't know exactly how you did it in the AFL. 9 2/3 innings. You struck out 13, only walked 2, gave up 2 earned runs, limited hitters to a 147 average. You're usually mixing in a mid-90s fastball and a mid-80s slider. But in terms of results, I mean, what do you feel like was working best against those guys? You mentioned having some experience like in Austin Martin or Edouard Julien, who you faced in the Texas League. But in terms of stuff, what do you feel like was playing best?
In terms of stuff, I would just say being able to land my slider a lot behind in counts. If I would get behind those guys, typically they're just sitting dead red heater, and to be able to land some of my off speed pitches, in a 2-1 count or 2-0 count, and just kind of work behind like that, I think was a big difference maker for me. It just would I remember one specific at bat, for example, was against Jordan Walker, and that dude just crushes baseballs, so it's just the only way I'm gonna get a heater in is if I can make him think, think twice, before I throw the fastball. So I was I remember I fell behind him, threw a couple off-speed pitches, 3-1, 3-2, and I think and then I threw a fastball 3-2, and he still hit it pretty hard, but he just missed it just enough where I got an out. So I think just that little hint of shred of doubt that I may have put in his mind in that at bat specifically, I think was a huge learning point for me, especially with very quality hitters like him and Julian and all those guys. So
yeah, I think that's a perfect example. I'm sure a lot of guys in the fall league were asking to save baseballs after getting Jordan Walker.
Yeah, for sure.
Makes a lot of sense. And we're getting you at a good time too. We were talking about the fall league just ending, but surprise, the team you were on won a title on Saturday. That's actually the second championship of the year for you. You pitched in both clinchers. You pitched in Saturday's game and back in Frisco when they won the Texas League title. You pitched in the clincher in that. What is it like coming out of the bullpen into a game like that? Because on Saturday you pitched in the 8th and 9th. It was a tied game at that point. The game went into extra innings. You passed the baton. What is going through your mind as you're coming in with, a ring on the line, essentially?
Yeah. So it was kind of funny in the Texas League in that championship for us. I think I came in with, it was either 1 out or no outs with first and second in the 7th or 8th inning. So I was like, well, dang, and their starter was he was just shoving, so and everyone in the bullpen was like, we just need to keep it here. We need to keep it here. Once this starter gets out, we're going to take the lead. We know it. So I was just kind of, I was pretty calm in that game. I felt calm. I've been in those situations before all year, and I was just like, you know what, execute my pitches, get some outs, just limit the damage here. And then just give our guys an opportunity to win the game. And we end up clawing back and winning the game there. And then when they put me in the fall league game, it was bases loaded, 2 outs with Noelvi Marte up to bat, and I was like, dang, this is a big spot too. It's tie game. And I threw an off-speed pitch. I can't remember I think he might have took it. And I think the pitching coach wanted another slider, in the dirt or something, just an off-speed pitch, and I shook to a heater, and he got a good piece of it, but our center fielder made a great play, and so I got out of that jam too. And then I think the next inning got a couple outs and walked a guy, and then we ended up getting out of there and winning the game in extras. But I think just in terms of coming into a game like that, it's just something I've been really trying to stay disciplined on and controlling my breathing and just believing in myself. Once I grab the ball, it's go time. It's me versus the hitter, and I know I got better stuff. And that's just my mentality when I step out on the mound every time in a situation like that. So.
Yeah, and that's interesting to hear you talk about that change in mentality, because you were somebody who made a good amount of starts last year in 2021, coming off the pandemic. This year, you move more full-time into a relief role. What was that like for you, having to kind of switch gears?
Yeah. Man, switch role. I mean, the main thing was just, getting loose and getting warmed up. As a starter, you kind of gradually just have time, you already have a set time when you're going to go out on the field, when you're going to start playing catch and all that. And it's just kind of like what you do every day, in terms of before the game, a throwing program, and you just kind of incorporate that as a starter. And then when you're a relief pitcher, you all of a sudden, hey, Wolfram, get hot, or Wolfram, get going. And it's like, oh man, so you got to kind of figure out what works for you. I typically throw a few plyo balls before I get on the mound, just to get my shoulder and arm loose, maybe some bands. I'm constantly stretching or, just trying to stay loose, maybe a little dynamic real quick. And then, I stand up on the mound with a power stance, and then I let it go. So that's just my little routine. I feel like there wasn't really much of a difference other than just like the tempo that you got to work at out of the pen between starting and then. I like both. So whatever the Rangers want me to do, I'm willing to do both, you know. So
Yeah, and just going back to your stuff again with that fastball slider being so good, how do you feel like they ticked up when you were working in shorter stints?
yeah, I think it definitely my fastball ticked up as far as the velo consistently. I was just able to like, you know, just not really think too much about like as much as the location as where I want to throw, is rather just attack the zone, you know, with my best stuff. So I think that just that in general was uh, something that helped me coming out of the pen. You know, just my stuff was a little sharper because I could just kind of empty the tank, you know, if I knew I was going to go 1 or 2 innings. So that was nice, and I felt great. Felt my body felt great all year, and I was just happy to be healthy all year and be able to pitch when my name was called. So
Yeah, you were one of the, you know, it's I feel like a lot of pitchers get sent to the fall league to make up for lost time. That wasn't the case for you. It was just adding on experience. One thing I want to touch on too, when you're talking about filling up the zone, you know, you struck out 71 batters this year in 57 innings with Frisco, but you also walked 43. And I want to visit a quote that you gave to the Holland Sentinel back in Michigan. It was,
yeah,
quote, "I struggled with command. It was more mental. I ended up getting a sports psychologist, and that has really helped me get back on track. I feel like it has changed my career, really." And I find that really interesting. I think so many times people get into mechanical changes and not mental
yeah,
changes in terms
yeah.
of command. What exactly worked for you going that route?
What worked for me it was just, you know, all my physical, I guess, attributes you could say on the mound and how my body felt, and uh data like spin, velo, all that stuff. It was like the highest it's ever been. So I knew it wasn't physical, or like even watching videos, like sometimes, you know, like I look good out there. Like I'm moving well. I'm moving the way I want to move. The ball's just not going where it was. And I knew it was mental because I'd get out there and I'd either speed up a little bit in my head. I was putting too much pressure on myself trying to do well, you know, because everyone says double A is kind of like a spot where you make it, and they're like quality hitters compared to the big leagues and stuff like that. So I think I was just thinking a little too much. Ended up getting a guy that was through one of my old coaches that he went to high school with, who's worked with a ton of big leaguers and stuff, and professional golfers, and just started working with him and developed a really good relationship, I felt like. And he just got me back on track, you know, gave me things and points of interest that worked for me in my life every day that I needed to focus on just mentally. And once I started doing that, I started to gain more confidence, and yeah, started throwing really well, and just stuck to it and stayed disciplined in the work I was doing mentally, away from the field, and then when I got to the field as well. So yeah, it worked out really good.
Yeah, and when did it feel like that really locked in? Was it middle of the season? Was it late in the season? Like, when did it feel like this routine you were developing with the sports psychologist really was working for you?
Yeah, I'd say honestly, it felt like it was pretty immediate once I started talking to him. So probably around early June, I'd say. There was one specific outing in Amarillo that I came in late, and that was like one of the games that they kind of gave me an opportunity. You know, I was struggling a little bit there, and had some good outings, but it was kind of like up and down. And then that particular outing that they put me in, and I threw really well, and I kind of just gained confidence from there. And then I started, you know, pitching later in the back end of games, and even saved a few games too.
Hmm.
So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I feel like pitching in Amarillo is difficult under any circumstances. So.
Yeah, it's a tough place.
Yeah, and then I guess let's just actually touch on that real quick. As a pitcher pitching in the Texas League, I mean, people know about the California League as being really hitter friendly, or the PCL, but I feel like the Texas League is developing a reputation for that, especially when you have to go to Amarillo. What is it like as a pitcher trying to pitch in some of those locations?
Yeah, I just remember, you know, the joke with a lot of guys on the team were like, "All right, how many weeks we got until Amarillo? We got to get our ERAs down before we head there." You know, it's pretty funny that everyone's kind of on the same page with that. Yeah, I mean, just that place is just, you see balls leave the yard at just an absurd amount. It's just
Right.
like some games, it's just a weird place. You're up by 7 and you blink and all of a sudden you're down by 2. It's like, what just happened? Yeah, some of the parks are just, the ball flies pretty good, especially with the big league balls that we were using there. But I mean, I just think, if you execute and put the pitches where you want to put the pitches and just attack hitters, it's kind of, it's, you got to be a little more cautious, I think, but you can't get too scared to pitch in a place like that. Otherwise you will make mistakes and it'll hurt you. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned, kind of jokingly that you guys were all saying we need to get our ERA in a good place before Amarillo, but does the organization isolate those stats at all and just say like, hey, we can kind of just put these off to the side because we know they're in a windy, high elevation place, whatever, they are just what they are? Or, do you just fold them in with everything else?
Yeah, I never had a conversation about that. I'm sure the data guys do something of that nature, especially with, launch angles and exit velos and stuff like that to determine if it's like an actual home run or what it may be, but, yeah, I'm sure they have their own little way around that. I mean, as pitchers, it's a home run. It's a home run. I know a lot of guys are just like, it stinks that you have to go pitch there. But
Right.
you look across the diamond and some of those guys, it's like they're pitching there all the time and they got like 7 8s, and then you see a guy with a 5 and you're like, dang, this guy must be a pretty good pitcher, So yeah, it's pretty. That's pretty fun place to play. Honestly, like it's not like fun, but it's a good atmosphere. The crowd gets into it. We always have like this water battle with Ruckus, their mascot, there before the game. So yeah, that's pretty fun too. But
yeah, and you were talking about data before too, in terms of knowing that all your stuff was there. It was just, a mental issue that you were trying to overcome. What data do you look at in between outings or over a month's time or something like that to determine what's working and what doesn't work?
Yeah, I would say the few that I look at personally is race of 2 strikes, how fast I can get to 2 strikes, and then just the shape of my fastball and slider, just to make sure they're staying consistent, like right where I want them, as far as like vertical break and stuff like that, and just making sure I'm staying behind the baseball when I'm throwing my 4-seam, and then having the slider just movement metrics, the movement profile the way I want it as well. When I start to see it like certain things like maybe too much gyro or too much sweep, I kind of in between the two. Then I'm like happy with that. And then the heater, I just don't want to cut it, and I don't really want to sink it. I just want to have a true back spun heater. So
yeah, and with that slider in particular, you said you don't want it to have too much gyro or too much sweep. So what is that sweet spot? What is it when it's exactly got the shape you want?
Ideally, if I could like put down on a piece of paper like what my slider would be, I would say like 0 to 6, 0 to 7 in my mind, So that's what I'm shooting for. But
Gotcha. And, we are also getting you at an interesting time this week coming off the fall league, because 40-man decisions had to be made yesterday. You are Rule 5 eligible this year. Texas didn't add you to the 40-man, but what was your day like yesterday knowing that this 6 p.m. Eastern deadline was kind of looming?
Yeah. I mean, there's always a thought, you're like, man, I pitched pretty good. There could be a chance. Yeah, and then ultimately it just didn't happen, but that's okay. I'm gonna be in a good spot heading into next season, and yeah, I mean it's really cool to see a lot of the guys I played with this year get added. Like Acuna. He's a great player. Then I played with Zach Kent a few years, and he's a great pitcher. And Dustin Harris, all those guys are really good dudes. Owen White and Cole Winn, they're both in my draft too, and yeah, it's really cool seeing those guys added. So yeah, it's awesome,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how much was that on your mind during the fall league? I mean, I feel like the fall league was an opportunity for you to try out, maybe not try out, but like show off why you are deserving of a 40-man spot. And it went really well. You were on the Fall Stars team, all that stuff.
Yeah.
How much were you thinking about that during your 6 weeks in Surprise?
Honestly, I wasn't thinking about it too much during the time I was just playing and being out there. I was just trying to enjoy it and just continue every day, be consistent and be the best pitcher I can be every day. And then after, it was kind of like once the season was done, I was like, oh, okay, I can, some of those off season things start to creep in my mind. And I thought about it a little bit, and I was like, oh, there's a good chance that it could happen. But, in the same breath, you never know what my journey is and where my road leads. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, now that you are, eligible for the Rule 5 draft, it's possible a team could come take you and put you on the major league roster. What do you feel like you proved to potential Rule 5 clubs during the time in the AFL?
Yeah, I think, it just, for other teams, it's just like, hey, I'm 6'8" lefty, coming out of the pen. I feel like I got some good stuff. I got a good fastball, good slider, good breaking ball. I've pitched as a starter, reliever, long relief, close, set up. Feel like I can do anything on the baseball field that you want as far as a pitcher. So, I feel confident, feel really good right now with where I'm at in my career. And yeah.
All right. Well, let's get this on the record because you just said this. You said 6'8". Your player page says 6'6". Is that something you're trying to get corrected? Okay.
Yeah, that's not right. Yeah, I'm 6'8". I was 6'6". That stuff, they finally got my weight right. I think it said like, I don't know, I'm like 245, but they had like 230 or something like that for years. And then they said 6'6". I think I was 6'6" my senior year of high school. So yeah, I grew a few inches after that. But,
well, yeah, to those of us who are right around 6 feet, I mean, at 6'6" versus 6'8", it doesn't matter, but I'm sure to you it does. So any Rule 5 clubs out there looking for a 6'8" giant on the mound, you know where to find one.
For sure.
And Grant, you were just telling us before, you got a busy off season coming up. You got a wedding coming up. Like, what is this off season going to be like for you on top of potentially Rule 5?
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be, I'm just going to treat it as the same, obviously the plan for the wedding and stuff that will be different. I'll have that, but I mean, that's all exciting, good things in my life that me and my fiance are really excited about. So, yeah, I'm just gonna keep preparing, get stronger, maybe add another tick to the fastball, just stay sharp and just get ready for next year, whether it's with the Rangers or someone else if I was to get picked up. But I'm gonna just prepare the same way I prepare every season. So
very cool. All right. Well, whether it's in Surprise at the Rangers complex or somewhere else in Arizona or maybe even Florida, we're looking forward to seeing you back out there in the spring. Grant Wolfram, pitcher in the Texas Ranger system. Thanks so much for joining us this week on the show before the show.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
LinkedIn is pretty great at a lot of things, like helping you tap into the latest trends and insights in your field. We cannot stop your coworker from tapping her pencil. LinkedIn can help you find new jobs that align with your career goals. We cannot help you find the source of that weird smell in the office fridge. Ew. And while we can't stop your coworkers from bringing their hobbies into the office, LinkedIn can help you bring your career to the next level. LinkedIn is the network that works for you.
Big thanks to the Texas Rangers' Grant Wolfram for joining the show on this week's episode. And with that, we're like fully into the offseason because where Grant spent 6 weeks, the Arizona Fall League is done for 2022. Another fun season in the AFL. And congratulations to the Surprise Saguaros who knocked off the Glendale Desert Dogs in the Arizona Championship League, the Arizona Fall League Championship game. There we go. Those are words that make sense. And did so in extra innings. 11 innings it took for Surprise to knock off Glendale. And Sam, you spent so much time, got a chance to see so much in the AFL this year. That championship game was a fun one. Your thoughts on this? First on the title for Surprise, but also just on the AFL season at large.
Yeah. So let's start with the title game for Surprise. We talked a little about this with Grant in the last segment. So if you listen to that, you already knew that Surprise won and that he pitched in the game, did not get the win or anything. But again, pitching in the 8th and 9th, pretty big deal in a championship game. So good for him. Surprise was the regular season champ as well. So, even though this was a 1-game format, there's some good justice in that and the fact that they won. I thought it was pretty funny that Scott Schreiber walked it off for Surprise, considering he's a Houston Astros prospect, as if the Astros needed more good news in November in a championship game format. Scott Schreiber is the one who walked it off, hit a ball to left center, probably would have been a double, goes down in the book as a single, but walk-off single in the 11th inning. Surprise never led in the game until the 11th, which was fascinating. It was 4-4 going into the 10th. Both teams traded runs in the 10th. So we go to the 11th. Glendale goes up again, 6-5. Surprise comes back and scores 2 runs in the bottom of the 11th, and they walk off as winners 7-6. So congrats to them. If you look at the Fall League as a whole, zooming way out here, it was again a hitters league. That's been a theme the last few years. We really saw hitters thrive, like Jordan Walker, obviously the top prospect in the Fall League, definitely lived up to the hype. Other guys stood out, like Zach Veen was the offensive player of the year after being an absolute menace on the base pass. When you think offensive player, think a guy who's going to hit a bunch of home runs. That wasn't Zach Veen's game in the Fall League, but every time he got on base, it looked like he was itching to go. That's just always been his skill set in the minor leagues. I believe he had the highest stolen base total in the Fall League since 2011. So it's been a while since somebody was as aggressive on the base pass as Zach Veen was. Kudos to him. Heston Kjerstad was the MVP, which is a major deal for him because he missed all of the 2021 season due to myocarditis, was still dealing with some of those effects this year, slowly coming back. Wasn't looking quite up to his previous level as such a high pick for the Orioles this year at High A Aberdeen. And I think he equaled his home run total at Aberdeen in the Fall League. Again, it's a hitters league. You guys are going to thrive there, but he looked great. The power was really playing. He was a real threat to pull the ball and drive it deep to right at any time he was playing. He looked supremely confident as well. So it was really good to see him just healthy, but also so productive that he became MVP. Matt Mervis tied for the league lead in home runs with 6. That's a big deal for him because he was using the Fall League as a potential launching pad to join the Cubs coming out of next spring. He had such a long season playing at 3 different levels, was in the minor league home run chase for much of the summer. The fact that he then carried that into the fall and led that league in home runs as well was special. When you look back, it's pop-up guys like Edouard Julien, who was the breakout prospect of the year in the Arizona Fall League. Twins prospect, second baseman, led the Texas League in OBP coming into the year, but showed more slugging ability. And I think that's a big deal for him is, can he be somebody who's more than just patient? Can he drive the ball when he makes contact? He showed it in the league itself, not so much in the home run derby where he was widely outmatched. But as long as it plays in games, that's the important bit. And he certainly showed that. Austin Martin looked great, collecting hits and keeping things moving on the base pass with 10 plus steals. Again, another Twins prospect. So if you're looking at pitchers, there were guys like Joey Wentz, who was 3 scoreless starts before he was bounced for Salt River. Connor Thomas added a cutter and led the league in strikeouts. That was a major deal. Evan Reifert of the Tampa Bay Rays didn't give up a hit until his final outing as a reliever for Mesa. Struck out, I want to say 62.5% of the batters he faced with a mid-90s fastball and a really high spin slider. He's becoming somebody who's on the radar in a deep Tampa Bay system. So, you look back on it and you're like, okay, there were a lot of offensive standouts and all of that, but the guys who did stand out, I think, are going to really use this opportunity moving forward. And we're going to see many of them potentially as early as next year. You look at Bryson Stott was in the Arizona Fall League last year and was in the World Series this year. It's very possible. So it was another fun Fall League campaign to wrap up for sure.
So
strike two this week in our modified three strikes, let's say. The end of the Arizona Fall League always comes slightly before a major deadline in the prospect community, which is the deadline to add prospects to a team's 40-man roster in order to protect them from the Rule 5 draft, which is coming up in the beginning of March. And every year, there's a selection of top prospects that get added to Major League 40-man rosters. There are some surprises of guys who maybe are added unexpectedly, and always a lot of surprises of guys who are left off of those lists, perhaps unexpectedly as well. Sam, give us the breakdown of what stood out to you about who got added and who didn't. There's one specific player who we're going to talk about next, but obviously a lot of top 100 guys factor into this and some other ones.
Yeah, let's hold that other guy for strike three and just some surprise picks we'll discuss here in another segment. But in terms of who got added at the 40-man deadline, it was Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern time. You have to be Rule 5 eligible and added to your 40-man to be protected from the Rule 5 draft. Rule of thumb on that, if you signed when you were 18 years or younger, you have 5 years in pro ball, 5 seasons in pro ball, I should say. If you signed when you were 19 or older, it's 4 seasons in pro ball. So the guys who were added, all top 100 prospects who were eligible were added. No surprise there. We're talking about Grayson Rodriguez, Diego Cartaya, Ellie De La Cruz, Marco Luciano, Noelvi Marte, Taj Bradley, Curtis Mead, Michael Bush, Brennan Davis, Owen White, Andy Pajes, Orelvis Martinez, Kevin Alcantara, Sadan Rafaela, and Andy Rodriguez. So 15 for 15 on the top 100 front. There were some other various surprises of guys who weren't protected and will be eligible for the Rule 5 draft. I was digging a little bit into the data of the last 5 Rule 5 drafts. 75%, roughly 75%, have been pitchers. Wow. So people use the Rule 5 draft basically to supplement your bullpen, which makes sense, right? Like
you can never have enough pitching.
Yeah, you never have enough pitching. It's usually the back end of the bullpen that you could use a little help in. Sometimes you're grabbing a starter who could be a long man, but whose stuff could play up in shorter stints if he's jumping from, say, AA or high A. So I thought, when looking at who didn't get protected, one name that stood out to me was Antoine Kelly of the Texas Rangers, the number 13 prospect in the Ranger system. Kelly was acquired this year from the Brewers. Super tall guy, another tall guy after we talked to Grant Wolfram, with a really good fastball and a really good slider. The walks really killed him at AA after the move to the Texas Rangers system. Maybe that scared the Rangers away. Maybe they thought, hey, nobody's going to touch this guy because we're just not sure if he can throw strikes. But if he can, all he needs is the fastball and slider. Like a lot of people think he's probably going to be a reliever someday anyways. If you're a Rule 5 club looking at like, hey, we could use a lefty out of the pen, you do a lot worse than Antoine Kelly for a very small risk. You just return him and lose a little bit of money for taking him in the Rule 5 draft. It's not the end of the world. Like I would definitely take a look at him. Another guy who I thought was interesting was for the Kansas City Royals. Another guy that they acquired this midseason. So normally when you see somebody acquire a player who's going to be Rule 5 eligible, you're not going to risk losing them this quickly. TJ Sikkema, number 16 prospect from the Kansas City Royals. He was acquired in the Andrew Benintendi deal just before the deadline. TJ Sikkema pitched a little bit in the fall league. Again, another guy who really struggled at AA after the move from the Yankees to the Royals. Maybe that was part of the reason why. But I think the stuff is certainly there. You look at Alec Marsh, who they did protect, who I think ceiling is higher, but he's had just as many struggles as TJ Sikkema has at the upper levels. A little surprising for me on that front. But again, TJ Sikkema, better chance to start, so maybe a little bit tougher to stuff in that bullpen. I'll give you one name of a position player who I would watch ahead of the Rule 5 draft. Tampa Bay Rays had a 40-man roster crunch. They do every year. They're not going to be able to protect every prospect. They had to make some moves. They traded Xavier Edwards. They traded Brett Wisely. They traded Miles Mastrobuoni, like guys who were on the 40-man periphery, who either had to be added or were currently on the 40-man. They dealt away for guys who they won't have to deal with for Rule 5 purposes for a few years. But Heriberto Hernandez, the outfielder, their number 17 prospect for the Tampa Bay Rays, they left him unprotected. And I know what I just said about it mostly being pitchers, and you really have to be a special outfielder to be picked. I don't know if Hernandez is that, but everything we've heard about him dating back to his days with the Texas Rangers, and he was included in the Nate Lowe deal from a few years back, is that he has exceptional exit velocities. When he hits the ball, it's really hard. He hits it hard to a lot of different places in the ballpark. It's, raw power that could play in the majors right now. And I think he would be a good long-term play for a lot of teams. Now, are you going to be willing to stash him for a year and make him your fourth or fifth outfielder? I don't know about that. He's had some struggles, especially when it comes to strikeouts, and that usually doesn't translate well. But you can't teach strength like that. You either have it or you don't. He definitely has it. And he's one name I will just be keeping an eye on, because I bet if the Rays had extra spot or two, they probably would have protected him.
The Rule 5 draft, by the way, not just confusing to you and me as, people who work in baseball, ultra confusing to you and me prior to our time working in baseball as baseball fans. It can also be confusing to players. This is one of my favorite stories. Ryan Roland Smith, the former Mariner and D-back, and my color analyst on the World Baseball Classic qualifier broadcasts last month and in September. Ryan at one time was taken by the Minnesota Twins in the Rule 5 draft. And he said he got a call from Terry Ryan. He was home in Australia, got a call. It was from a Minnesota number. And this is like back in the early 2000s when it's like, well, that's weird. What could this possibly be about? And he answers, and Terry Ryan says, Ryan, this is Terry Ryan. I'm the general manager of the Minnesota Twins. We just took you in the Rule 5 draft. And Ryan said, oh, okay. What's the Rule 5 draft? So don't worry if you're confused on it. Sometimes those guys are confused too. But
one of my favorite stories, I'll do another one kind of similar to that real quick, was a few years ago. The Red Sox selected Josh Rutledge. I don't know if you remember this.
Yes.
In the Rule 5 draft. But it was fascinating because they had him at the end of the year, and then he became a minor league free agent, and he signed with the Rockies, I believe. But the Rockies didn't add him to the 40-man because he was a minor league free agent. There's no threat of that. And then the Red Sox were just like, no, actually, we do
we'll take him back.
Yeah, we'll take him back, but also he has to be on the major league roster now.
Right.
And I talked to him that spring, and he was just like, yeah, I mean, they could have just signed me. I would gladly come back. Like, they didn't need to do all this stuff, but it was just one of those instances where I bet there were some meetings, and then somebody panicked of like, oh no, we had a guy who could have helped us in this regard, and we didn't.
We should probably get this guy back.
Yeah. And I don't think he stuck. Like, there were all sorts of issues with that. But another thing that stood out to me in having that conversation, he said he was on a cruise with his wife. I think it was like on his honeymoon or something. And he was just like, oh, I got a call, and I guess I'm going back to Boston. That's how it went down. And I was like, all right, that's cool. And then it hit me years later. His wife is Laura Rutledge,
right?
The ESPN football, she's on all sorts of football shows for ESPN. So that was pretty neat. But yeah, even when we think, oh, do I have this figured out? Am I getting it right?
We got this all figured out. Yeah. Even the players sometimes don't. So with that, we're going to move on to our final topic, which is one very surprising name that was added to a 40-man roster ahead of the Rule 5 draft here in 2022. That is former first-round draft selection Riley Pint, who was taken with the 4th overall selection in the 2016 Major League Baseball first-year player draft by the Colorado Rockies. Riley Pint has had an odyssey in professional baseball, to say the least. He briefly retired, came back to the Rockies organization, reached AAA Albuquerque last year, was sporting a very impressive mustache. Riley Pint, of course, was heavily featured in Jeff Passan's book, The Arm, as being somebody who, was kind of breaking the mold of the single sports specialist that has grown so in vogue, not just in baseball, but really in every sport. Riley Pint was a guy who played multiple sports and, seemed to be really healthy, was throwing 103 as a high school senior, and very highly touted. Came into the Rockies organization in 2016 and just really, really struggled, especially with his command, and especially over the stretch that you really expect a player to kind of establish himself in pro ball. That just didn't happen with Riley Pint. He got into A ball and into high A and just could not figure it out command wise. And his numbers, I mean, were pretty ugly. In 2016, numbers that you think like, okay, well, it's, first time in pro ball, he's in rookie ball, but an ERA of 5.35 in 11 games with then rookie level Grand Junction. He struck out 36. He walked 23. Next year in Asheville, 2-11, a 5.42 ERA, 93 innings. He struck out 79 and walked 59. Then things really started to fall apart. Health-wise, he just wasn't right, and only pitched in 4 games in pro ball in 2018. And in those 4 games, over 8 1/3 innings, he walked 11 and struck out 8. Came back in 2019, went back to Asheville, was converted to a reliever, came out of the bullpen for 18 of his 21 appearances. ERA over 8.5. He walked 31 and struck out 23 in 17 2/3 innings. Then he retired for a little while. Pitched a bit in 2021, came back in 2022. And after coming out of his retirement, he announced that retirement in June of 2021, returned in 22 and pitched at AA and at AAA. And he's really a pretty eye-opening story, and a guy who, his numbers last year didn't exactly blow the doors off, but they were so much better than what Riley Pint has done over the first few years of his career. And command-wise, much improved. He made it up to AAA. He only made 3 appearances at AAA, but combined between AA and AAA, 41 relief appearances, struck out 58 and 45 2/3 innings, only walked 31. This was a story that, 2 years ago, if you had said this to somebody, they would have thought, well, that's quite a turnaround for Riley Pint. And that was before he retired and came back. This is a very cool baseball story.
Yeah, no, very much so. And it was a shock to the system to see his name added, which I can only imagine what it was like for him.
Yeah.
But it's proof that in the Rule 5 draft, people like stuff. Like if you have stuff, we will try to figure out the control later. And Riley Pine has always had stuff. That's not been a concern. It's just, can he throw strikes? He showed some steps forward, like you said, in that regard in 2022, getting as close as he's ever been to the big leagues. So kudos to him for coming back after retiring. I mean, when he retired, I thought that was the end of Riley Pine. I didn't think we were going to hear from him again.
It's like
now
Mark
he's on a 40-man
Appel.
roster.
You know, Mark Appel, it's a very similar story, except that Riley Pine was a high school guy. Mark Appel was a college guy. But, for Mark Appel, it kind of seemed like, oh, this is a guy who knows how much he wants to accomplish outside of baseball. I don't know if we'll ever see him again. Riley Pint, similar story in the struggles, and, coming back, Mark Appel made his big league debut. We'll see if Riley Pint has something similar in the offing coming up.
Yeah, and there's one name I want to add to this list too, who's very similar to both of these guys. John Singleton got added to the Brewers 40-man roster.
Right.
And that was another shock to the system because, we were talking about Rutledge before and how the Red Sox could have just signed him to a minor league deal and kept him around. The Brewers just a few weeks ago signed Singleton, re-signed him to a minor league deal with an invite to big league spring training.
Yeah.
So obviously they wanted him back. That things worked out, and I'll get into why that's special in a second here. But then a few weeks later, they're like, oh, actually, we're worried about losing you to the Rule 5 draft. So congrats. Now you're on the 40-man. Big deal for him. John Singleton, you might remember as a prospect in the Astros and Phillies organizations. A lot of people thought he was going to be the first baseman of the future for the Astros. He made the major leagues at one point, but hasn't been in the big leagues since 2015. He was out of baseball completely from 2018 to 2020, played in Mexico in 2021. So that's not technically affiliated ball, but he was playing baseball last season. Signed a minor league deal with the Brewers in the spring, led all of the minor leagues this year in walks with 117 at AAA Nashville, had 24 homers. That was second most in the Brewer system. So John Singleton is exactly who he always was. Some of the reasons he fell out of baseball, there were drug-related suspensions that lasted a long time, and there were reasons behind that. But we're seeing some of the stigma change on that. I don't know how much that's helped him in that regard, but he can play.
Yeah,
the guy can take his walks. He can put up a big OBP. He can plug the ball still with the best of them in the minor leagues, at least when it comes to the Brewers system. So kudos to him for getting that opportunity. And again, he's one call away from making the major leagues. And that would be his first time in the majors since 2015.
Yeah, pretty amazing stories. And yeah, John Singleton's another guy who just has a baseball odyssey. You look at his baseball reference page and it's like, man, that dude is chasing this game everywhere, and good for him, because there were a lot of people who had a lot of opinions on John Singleton, and he's a guy who is very easy to cheer for when you look at the fact that he has just not given up on this dream. And so some very interesting names for you to keep an eye on as the year goes along toward opening day in 2023, and see who among these dudes is going to be or be back in the big leagues sometime soon. So that's it for Three Strikes. Josh Jackson swinging by the show before the show, and we're back to wrap it up on the other side.
Kraft Mac and Cheese is better than 90s hip-hop. We'll remind you of your childhood without making you feel incredibly old. Kraft Mac and Cheese. Best thing ever.
We interrupt this podcast to bring you another thrilling edition of Ghosts of the Miners. Now, here's your correspondent and host, Joshua Jackson.
Welcome back to Ghosts of the Miners, in which all of you out there in Radioland must identify the legitimate historical ball club hiding amidst the fraudulent pair. One of them was the genuine article. The others are fake news. In the last segment, I asked you which of the following minor league baseball teams did at one time exist. A. The Dodge City Sailors. B. The Dallas Submarines. C. The Las Cruces Clippers. Don't be down if you picked a team other than B. The Dallas Submarines. How were you to detect a team named for a marine vessel lurking beneath the landlocked surface of North Texas? But the Dallas Submarines pop up in the historical record for the Texas League of 1920 and 1921. Long represented on the circuit as the Giants, Dallas underwent a big change in adopting a new name in 1919, becoming the Marines, which charted the course to becoming the Submarines. Or maybe it wasn't such a big change, but a wave of informal title shifting. Some sources have the Giants becoming the Marines in honor of the many waterways near Dallas, and then being rechristened the Submarines because of a combination of a round of flooding in the area and the team's underwhelming performance in 1919 and into 1920. But dive into the depths of the archives, and the truth rises like a periscope. The Dallas club was casually referred to as the Submarines as far back as February of 1917. The origin story of the name may be under the radar, but the Submarines of 20 and 21 were perfectly traceable. Under the leadership of returning veteran skipper Ham Patterson, Dallas piggybacked on the fifth place finish of the 19 club to be sandwiched in the middle of the pack with a 63 and 85 record. The Submarines floated to fourth in 21, but their 81 and 78 mark put them only within 26 and a half games of the Fort Worth Panthers, who were really strutting their stuff with an outrageous offensive campaign from Clarence Big Boy Kraft. And the Dallas club took after a more sensible Kraft for 22, too, giving the Submarines moniker Das Boot to saddle up as the Dallas Steers, moving past Peterson with new manager Walter Morris. They still couldn't catch the Panthers, but the Steers finished third and posted an 82 and 74 record, aiming higher than the Submarines ever hit. And that's how the Submarines were decommissioned. Now, on to the question for next time. Which of these clubs tooled around in the minors of yesteryear? A. The Flint Arrows. B. The Oildale Drills. C. The Hickory Hammers. Want to know the answer? Check the shed. Or tune into the next Ghosts of the Miners. But for now, you'll have to excuse me. My producer Ben Hill is out looking for cranberry sauce, and he's getting quite bogged down.
Saying goodbye on this week's episode of the show before the show. The dog just jumped up on the bed behind me, and I was like, are we having an earthquake? What is happening here? MILB.com is where you can find all the latest and greatest about minor league baseball. You can check out our prospect content as well, MLB Pipeline. And next week, Sam, it's another big draft. Doesn't have any actual life-altering implications on players like the Rule 5 draft does. Or maybe it does. I don't know. People could take it very seriously. Tee it up for us.
I mean, we could be pushing hat sales for some of these teams that we select. So maybe it's life-altering in that way, not to pump our own tires. I will turn this, as I often do on podcasts, into a podcast meeting. Tyler, how should we do this? Do we want to just choose our 4 or 5 favorites, or do we want to break it down into categories? I feel like categories are a little tougher.
Yeah. I think categories with this one are kind of tough.
Yeah.
I think we just go with our favorites.
We're just going to go with our favorites. I think that's about right. But it'll be fun. It'll be a lot of fun to dive into this. Like we said at the top of the show, we're probably going to reveal a little bit about our personalities along the way. I will keep the curses to a minimum. Although that'll be up to you, Tyler.
We'll see about that.
Yeah, I say that, and then you're going to take somebody, and I'm going to be very angry.
Just going to block you with every pick that I have in front of you. I'm going to read what you're coming up with. Like, oh, he's
and
going
in true Marvel fashion, I will be the Hulk by the end of the podcast. There's that.
So tune in next week for a special holiday edition of the Show Before the Show podcast. And that'll do it. Big thanks to Grant Wolfram from the Texas Rangers and to Benjamin Hill and Josh Jackson. And for Sam Dykstra, my name is Tyler Maughan. We'll catch you next week.